ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
Check this out, we got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, the #1 sports information program in America, the Breakfast Bankroll, with your host, the sports broker, Jeff Dawson.
Good morning, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for the Breakfast Bankroll with good friend and colleague, Mr. Beam 'em Up, Scotty Webb, live from Tampa, as we're here to talk some MLB weekend recap, what the eyes saw. If I add up correctly, almost 60 games played. My Red Sox have played 61 to be exact. So now we start the countdown. 100 games left, 99, 98. Almost like the beers on the wall when we were kids. Long way to go. Short time to get there. And there's some teams that are playing themselves out. Royals bringing up Jack today. And now we're asking the Red Sox, where's our guy? And I just don't know what's going on. And again, I try not to make this about Fenway Park, the Red Sox, but it's absolute chaos here. So we're going to have some fun today. The headliner today, can the Red Sox give Angels fits? FITTS tonight at Fenway Park. Of course, Richard Fitts on the mound. So a little poetic justice there. So shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. Travis, Zach, Guy, myself, Ian Brahali, Carol Bucks, Ali, Matt, Jay. The list is endless. Just come on board. You're going to have fun here through 2025 and beyond. And AtlantaSteaksandSeafood.com. Head on over to Facebook, introduce yourself to Mr. Terry Smith, then come on back to AtlantaSteaksandSeafood.com. Steaks, seafood, chops, appetizers, wines. Terry's got it all. He's also got 4 subscription plans. Just set it and forget it. Every 30 days, have a big box of protein for the month. I got mine on Wednesday. Yesterday had filet mignon and a nice cowgirl prime steak. Oh, God. You can cut it with a butter knife. I promise you that. So come on board. Tell them ECSI sent you there. So without further ado, Mr. Scotty Webb. What's up, Scotty?
Hey, we got another weekend in the book of these Major League Baseball games, and I thought the weekend was it was crazy. I mean, you know, you have teams scoring 15 runs and 16 runs and stuff, and you had bullpens of losing it in the end, and you got the Milwaukee Brewers winning like, I don't know, 8 in a row or something like that. So it's like, you know, it's Major League Baseball. It's right in the middle of the season. And I shouldn't say middle, but it's getting closer to that. And I think that we're in June now. So by the end of this month, we're going to kind of have things sorted out in a better way, because there's still some questions out there. But I think the focus is getting clearer and clearer.
You know, it's funny because I'm taking a look at the updated standings, the big spreadsheet here. And here, I'll just some stuff that is sticking out. Toronto Blue Jays now 31-28. Your Tampa Bay Rays 30-29. Their run differential now from your onslaught of late plus 41. By the way, the Tigers. There we go. Another power surge. I can't make this shit up here. Hold on, guys. I can't make this up. We just start a show and we get a power surge here. So it is what it is. The Detroit Tigers, they took the big run on from Minnesota. Now the Guardians are 6 games back. The death by 10,000 paper cuts, as we like to say there. Seattle, a half-game lead. Here come the Astros. National League, Mets back on top, 1-game lead over the Phillies. The Nationals, I've been talking about them forever. They remind me of the Oriole team a few years ago. The team that just kept on, when they play hard and they don't stop and they can score crooked numbers with the best of them. The Braves now 9.5 games out. You mentioned it on Friday. I'm going to add to it. I do think they could be toast here. The Cubs are the dangerous team, of course. 4 games up. But the Cardinals, 33-26, and here come the Brewers, 8-2, winners of 7 in a row, only 5.5 back. Dodgers now win the first 2 against the Yankees, lose with Yamamoto. The 1 game we thought they would win, they lose. Of course, that's baseball. 2-game lead over the Padres, 3 over the Giants. I think we're going to put a fork in the Diamondbacks as Burns walks off, said his elbow's dead, shot. He could be done for the season. I'm not being a doctor there. But the Dodgers starting to separate. So I'm going to put you up front to talk for a few seconds. I'm going to try to reload this, okay?
Yeah, no worries. So I think some of this you need to look at in terms of I had some standing stuff up here so that you could see it. Like we talked about, run differential and things like that, but I don't always think. I think run differential is a good key to certain things. The good teams are going to score more than the bad teams. They're going to beat them by more than other teams that they play. But one of the things I think that is especially in Major League Baseball today, there's a pretty good differentiation between the teams that can beat the good teams. So if you're above 500 and you can beat the team like that, that's pretty good, because there's a lot of teams like the Sacramento, Oakland A's, whatever you want to call them. They've fallen on bad times. The Angels have kind of gone up and down, but they're not a winning team. Obviously the White Sox and obviously the Rockies and the Marlins, and I know you like the Nationals, but they're not those teams. So you got to go beat those teams, right? But what about beating the teams like the Yankees and the Mets and beating the teams like the Tigers and teams that are over 500? Well, there's a couple of things I think that stood out to me when I looked at some of this, because when I look at it that way, I think of things as being more real. And being, I guess less fake, if you want to call it that. The New York Mets, for example, they've played 28 games against teams over 500. They're 18-10. That's pretty good. I mean, that's +8 to 500. That's the best in baseball. And the New York Yankees They're 22-15. They played 37 games. So that also tells me the Mets are getting ready to start playing a tougher schedule as we go down the road. And that kind of helps you too with kind of figuring out what certain things are going to look like. I think in that regard, I think the Yankees might as well have already wrapped up the American League East. I don't mean that in any disrespect to any of these other teams, but they played 37 times against those teams, over 500 teams, or 22-15. But anything can happen with injuries and different things. So, but anyway, I think that's a pretty big telling thing, because the St. Louis Cardinals are 16-12. That's +4, and that's kind of third on this list. The Detroit Tigers, they were 23-18, so they're 5 ahead. The team I don't like, but whatever. The Cleveland Guardians are 19-15. They're +4 in that category, so I thought that was pretty real for them. And a team like the Dodgers, for example, the Dodgers, they've only played 22 times against teams over 500. They're 12-10, so that means their schedule is going to get tougher, and we'll see how they can kind of get through with the pitching the way it is for that team. The Tampa Bay Rays, you brought them up. They have played 35 times, 35 already, against teams that are over 500. They're 19-16. So these teams that are in these spots that are doing good against the better teams in baseball, that's a good sign. Like here's a good example. The Houston Astros are 23-21. They played 44 games against teams over 500, 2 ahead. And then if you slide them down to the team that they're kind of facing here, which is the Seattle Mariners, they're 12-16. So they're 4 games under and played way less games. So I think, and I looked at the schedules here, I think at the end of June, so beginning of July, Houston's going to be in front of Seattle. And it's just kind of, when you kind of start looking at it and you go, well, how good is Seattle? Well, they're as good as the catcher goes, Raleigh. And they got some pitching, but, I mean, they're not hitting. They're not doing it. Rosarang is batting almost 190 something. He's in the 200s, but Rodriguez, their superstar, is probably the most overrated superstar in baseball. So, as it turns out, I think a team concept with Houston, I think they're going to be good. The other separations that you're looking for are going to be in the National League East. You're going to be looking to see what happens with the Mets and the Phillies and the Braves. And, I think the Braves are make it, break it this month. Their schedule for this month for the Braves, if I can pull them up here real quick. I had them just a second ago. Here we go. The Braves play the Diamondbacks, and they're going to have to win these games. They're going to have to win a lot. So they got to beat the Diamondbacks, and then they get the Giants and the Brewers. Well, the Brewers is a bad time to play them because obviously they're winning. And then they get the Rockies. Okay, they get a 3-game kind of breather. And then they get the Mets. And then they play the Mets in 3 games and then 4. So 7 games split up by the Marlins. And the Marlins will play tough. That doesn't mean they're good. They just play tough because it's a division game. And then they get the Phillies. So it's no cakewalk of a month of June for the Braves. They get 3 games against the Rockies, 3 games against the Marlins, who's in their division, and then everybody else is a pretty tough opponent for them. So I think some of these teams are going to fall to the wayside, and then some of them we're going to figure them out. Like, looking at that list again, the San Diego Padres, they've played 29 times against teams over 500. They've only won 11. They're 11-18. I think they're pretty fraudulent in that retrospect. And then when you start to think about what the Padres are doing in terms of what their schedule looks like, it's a make it or break it month for the Padres. The Padres have what I would say is a pretty big series here against the Giants. They have 4 games against the Giants, and then they get the Brewers, and then they get the Dodgers for 3, and then the Diamondbacks, the Dodgers, the Royals, the Nationals, the Reds, and then the Phillies. So this is a pretty rough stretch for them. And if they're going to play like they have against these good teams under 500 by a pretty good stretch, I think you're going to see the Padres kind of drop to a point like you're going to go, oh, well, they're kind of like the Braves. They're dropping right out of it. So we'll see. So I think June is going to be a pretty big month to determine some of these teams. And then I think based off of how that turns out, I think you got the whole month of July to figure out what the trades are going to start looking like to bolster what some of these other teams you might want to make a run might look like. Like the Giants, for example, maybe they're in it. Maybe they come through June with a pretty good run. The Padres kind of fall out maybe. And, they decide, okay, we got to do some things to be competitive, because in the National League, you've got, I pulled up the playoff odds in the National League. To make the playoffs, you got Phillies at 87%, Mets 86%, Cubs 85%, Dodgers 98%. So those kind of four teams look like, yeah, they're probably going to make it. And then you've got to fight the Padres, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Braves, the Mets. Well, I already said the Mets, but there's only like 2 spots left. So those teams all got to figure out what they're going to do and how they're going to get there and what's going to best benefit them. So I think that you might start seeing some of these teams do some things, So say the Padres kind of start falling behind and get, fall back. Well, maybe they go trade a guy that's doing well, like Sheets, who's doing great for them. And, like the Giants need another hitter. They need some guys that can hit. So, maybe that offense helps, the Giants or something like that. I'm just making it up. But you follow where I'm going is I think that June is going to be a bigger separator for some of these teams. July is going to be the month that says, hey, we got to figure this out. And then, obviously August, September, October, they make the runs. I think, like you talked about, bringing up the kids, we'll see what that looks like for some of these teams. And it may help some. And, it's hard to sit there and go, we're going to bring these kids up, and these kids are going to be the guy that bats third and hits, 40 home runs and drives in 100 RBIs, because that doesn't really happen. What happens is that they learn Major League Baseball. They learn how to travel, what it looks like, how to play at the big league level, and they got to try to produce. So it's a pretty rough spot, especially if you're going to put them in positions where they're going to be the dynamic key issues that make a team make it to the playoffs or not. I think some of these teams going to have to survive. I think the Dodgers will. The Dodgers need to survive. They're in survival mode. I mean, I know they beat the Yankees, but they need to be on survival mode until they can get their pitching back. And when they get their pitching back, I think the Dodgers are the best team in baseball. But right now, I don't know that they're the best team in baseball. I mean, they're the last 10. I think they're 5-5. The last 20 games. I've got it right here. Where is it? The Dodgers in the last 20 games. Dodgers. They're 10-10 in the last 20 games. They're 6-4 in the last 10 games. You're playing 500 baseball. That's not dominating the league. So I kind of think that they're on standby mode. Their offense can carry them until they can get their best pitchers back. When they can get their best pitchers back, they're going to be hard to beat. So we'll see how that all turns out for them. I don't think there's any issues with them not making the playoffs, none of that kind of stuff. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I kind of like to look at it, to see who's real by playing those teams over 500.
Short slate today. 7 games on the docket. It's Joe Ryan Day in athletics. As you talked on Friday, this team is reeling. 1-9 their last 10, lost 6 in a row. In comes Joe Ryan, the headliner again. Can the Red Sox give the Angels fits tonight with Richard Fitts versus Anderson? Sox minus 146 and 9.5 over. It's beautiful here on Cape Cod today. You talked about San Diego, San Fran. On paper, Webb versus Kolek to me is a first five advantage for the Giants. But I'll be honest with you, we had a bad month in May in the MLB. And it's funny. I've gone, first fives, team totals, full games, first five team totals, first five minus the hook, full games minus the. We've tried it all, and it's almost like Chinese. We're adding. We fired two sources the last 2 weeks. We've added two sources. What do you tell the novice person that's trying to get into baseball as we're wrapping up the NBA, the NHL? Because a lot of times at this point of the year, Scotty, the wife's tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, the kids are done for the summer. We got the cottage on the Cape. We got the cottage on the mountains. Soccer camp, lacrosse camp. How do you keep everyone engaged in this marathon approach in the MLB?
Well, I think the first thing about baseball that people don't really understand is it's 162 games. And I know we say that all the time, but what does that really mean? Well, that means there's 40 different times you're going to have 4-game streaks of something. 40 different times. You're going to have things that go good, things that go bad, things that get back and forth all the time. And it always changes, right? And I think there's a lot of people that like to do trends and a lot of people that like to do all this other stuff. None of that stuff is consistent in baseball. It just isn't. So a couple of things that are consistent in baseball is pitching dominates because pitching travels. A good pitcher can be good anywhere. A good offense isn't that way. A good offense doesn't necessarily go be a good offense on the road. You can see it. It doesn't work that way. So all your handicapping is always going to be based around your starting pitchers. And depending upon how you like to do certain things, and I think one of the things you got to remember about pitchers, they're not robots. And they don't go out there and pitch to their average every day of what they are. Sometimes they be above that and sometimes they're below that. And when they're below that, they lose. So you sit there and you go, oh my God, I just lost a bet because of this. So it's a couple of things. I think you can never beat yourself up over losing baseball bets because you can lose baseball bets in all kinds of different ways. It doesn't mean you had bad handicap. It doesn't mean you looked at things the wrong way. It doesn't mean anything. It just stuff happens in baseball. It's just unbelievable. I was on the Seattle Mariners the other night against, I don't remember who they were playing, but they bring in their closer to close out the game, and they had a 3-run lead. And he hasn't given up a run all season. And he gets the first two guys out, and then the ninth hole hitter hits a home run. The next guy, so he only needs one more out, and we're ahead by 2. The next guy gets a base hit, and then because he's the leadoff hitter, he steals second base. Okay, whatever. Then he gets driven in by the next guy who gets a double, and then I'm going, oh my God, now we're only ahead by 1 run, and then they get a base hit, knock him in, tie the game, goes into extra innings, and we lose. And I go, it's just baseball. I need a 1 out, and I got a guy on the mound who's never given up an earned run the whole season long, and I lose. But that's the way baseball works. Baseball, there's so many games that stuff like that happens. And when you bet on them, you see it. And, like if you're not betting on the games, you wouldn't even know that stuff like that was going on. You just don't. But you're betting on it. So as you bet on it, you do. So I think that what I've learned, and you got to start changing stuff up. So, for example, yesterday I couldn't find a bet I liked, but I did find a couple of spots where I thought totals were good. So I bet yesterday and got lucky as hell in one of them, but I bet the Boston Red Sox game yesterday with Crochet on the mound, first 5 under 4.5. Well, they scored 4 runs in the first damn inning. And I'm like, this isn't going to go well. Well, sixth inning rolls around, it's still 3-1. I win the bet, right? So stuff happens where you sit there and you go, well, shit, I lost that Seattle game because of something stupid and stuff happened, and I won this game somehow, miraculously. I won this game. Nobody scored any runs. But I do think you mix things up, right? Like, you know me, I don't play a lot of totals. I do play a lot of sides and things like that because I have my own numbers and match them up and see where the value in my mind is. But I played that total, and then I played the Braves game. I don't remember. It was whoever the Braves played. That was Elder against some. Oh no, that was the Red Sox game. I played the early game. I played the Texas Rangers with DeGrom, and I played. He was playing St. Louis in that game with Fetty, and the total was 4. And I bet under 4 in the first 5 innings, and it was 3. So I won both bets, but I changed sort of what I was looking at. So I think you have to, unless you have something that stands out in your head, you just got to start looking at stuff. So you get my bet sheet the bet score thing I've been giving you. And one of the things that I found on that by using is it's separated in a sense that the starting pitcher, and then you have the offense and you have the bullpen. And if you can look at, say, starting pitchers, and like for today, I'm looking at like the A's game. And I sent it to you, so you have it. It's in your email. But the A's game, the A's offense is like terrible. That's like bad. But they're facing Joe Ryan, and Joe Ryan's going to get all the points for the starting pitcher. He knocks off all the boxes. So what does that tell me? Well, that tells me 2 ways to bet this game. You can bet this game team total for the A's under. I don't know. I didn't look at the number yet. So you can look at the team total for that. And if it doesn't make a lot of sense for the team total for that game, then you can start looking at, how good is the Minnesota offense? Well, when you look at the Minnesota offense, it hasn't been good. It's been bad. So you got 2 bad offenses against 2 decent pitchers because Severino's pitching tonight. So maybe instead of you just doing a team total under for the A's, maybe you just play the whole game under. So it's just different ways to look at different things. And then, like the Minnesota's got a great bullpen. So when you kind of match it all up, you sit there and you go, well, the A's can't hit, and they're going to go against good pitching, both front and back. So that tells me they're not going to score a lot of runs. So if you don't like the line on what you're getting out of Minnesota, and they're an away team, maybe you play first 5 for Minnesota, but then you end up to hit on offense. And offensively, where are they? Bring it up. That's scored. Offensively, they don't click any of the boxes, I don't think. Yeah, offensively, neither team clicks any box for the bet score in the offense. So then I looked at it like Minnesota, the pitcher hits every one of them. Bing, 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 all the way across. And then when it comes to they hit the bullpen boxes except strikeouts per 9 innings. So I thought, well, that's probably pretty good. So that's why I'm looking at that game that way. So you have to, as a bettor, find ways to utilize the information that you have to your best advantage. And I think that you have to be open to suggestions and thoughts because your way of thinking isn't always going to be consistent with what you see. Like this whole weekend, I thought the lines were crazy. It was hard to bet the games. So most of the games I bet weren't that way. I bet totals because I think that, I'm not necessarily a totals guy, but sometimes you're going to run into that where you're starting to look at totals and go, holy shit, these lines are pretty good for the totals. I need to find a side or I need to find something else to make it all work. And there's baseball so confusing too, because how do I say this the right way? So you get topped out, right? So the Yankees come into the Dodgers. They were 9-1 in the last 10 games. They had just swept the Angels. Well, guess what? They're on the road. They're not going to win all these games on the road. So hindsight looking backwards, I guess, they lost the first game and they were ahead 5-1 with Fried on the mound. It's like, holy shit, they're going to win this game. Well, they didn't. And then they got slaughtered in the second game with Warren on the mound. And Warren was in one of those spots too where he had been pitched like 4 or 5 straight great games. Well, again, baseball's all about it's a long season, so you can't stay at that premium optimum high. You're going to fall back. So if you can kind of go, well, are they tapped out on the – so like Milwaukee Brewers, they're tapped out high. You betting on Milwaukee Brewers, you're crazy. And I get it. You ride the streak, but you're going to get hurt because you're going to pay premium prices and you're going to be looking at the Brewers, and the Brewers are not that team. You know, they're going to fall back. And, you know, maybe today's a great spot for be betting Reds. My number on the Reds is much better than what the number on here says. I think the number was like 110 or something. My number is like 125 Reds. So, you know, this is one of those spots where, you know, you got Savali on the mound for the Brewers. Okay, well, he pitched good his last couple times out. He's only been off the disabled list for those couple times. He's going to go pitch against Cincinnati. Singer's been bad, so Singer's probably going to pitch good, right? You buy them when they're low, you sell them when they're high, and most people don't get that about baseball is they don't want to sell high. They want to keep buying high, and then they buy high, and then they get burned. And then they do that on 3 or 4 or 5 teams, and then that 3 or 4 or 5 teams turns into 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row. And then you sit there and go, holy shit, I don't know what I'm doing. You do. It's just you got to balance and recover and balance and recover. That's what makes baseball so difficult.
Well, like I said, there's 7 games here, short slate. What we always do is we'll bring you front and forward again so you can break down some games if you have anything in the pocket. Unlike Friday when you got, 15 games to break down, this will be a cakewalk for you.
Yeah, it's like you can go a little bit into some of these games this way. So, like one of the things is that I thought was, where's my numbers at? Go over here, go over here. So I use a lot of Profit X stuff. So my numbers are going to be a little different than what you're going to see because they're a little bit. But like 2 things that stood out to me today. A, Miami plays at home against Colorado, and I thought the line was stupid. So what I mean by that is Profit X has Miami minus 180. I know when you look at it, other places it's going to be like 190. That's way too high. And now I get it. Colorado's a team that's going to set the record for being the most worst team there is. And I get that. But Miami, they're going to be a 400 team. They're going to lose a lot. 400, if you think about what 400 is, 400 means they're going to win, say, 65 games, 66, 64. That means they're going to lose almost 100. And you're going to tell me that they're $200, minus 200, minus 190, better than anybody else? You're crazy. It's too high. So that stood out to me. And the other part of that game that stood out to me is if you really look at the performance of these games, when you look at these 2 pitchers, Meyer was good when he started, and he's young, and he's got good stuff. Marquez, coming back from surgery and making a recovery year, he didn't get off to a good start at all. But now Meyer's falling flat on his face. He's getting killed in every game he pitches. And Marquez, his last 3 out of 4 starts have been really good. So I'm not telling you that the Rockies are the right side to bet in terms of they're going to go win the game, but I will tell you they're going to be real competitive tonight. And I think that they're probably in a spot where that line is way off. My number on the game in that game was Miami minus 142. And I think that's probably more reasonable in a sense that you got pitchers that are kind of equal. And if not equal, you got one in Colorado being better than the other. The only other problem is Colorado can't score. Miami can't score really either. So you got 2 offenses that are kind of bad. So anyway, it's just one of those, So one rule of thumb too in Major League Baseball is if you bet bad teams, expect bad things to happen. I get it. You're betting value and you're betting this and you're betting that, and you see this and you go, look, they're bad teams because they're bad teams. They do stupid stuff. They get picked off third base and stuff like that. They run through stop signs and get thrown out at home. They make the error when you need them to get the out, right? That's what bad teams do. Watch them at the plate. They're not plate disciplined. They're going to swing at stuff. Then you go, holy crap, that was over your head. What are you doing? Right? That's what bad teams do. So they're learning and growing and developing supposedly at this level. And the reality becomes is when you bet bad teams, bad things happen. And when you got two bad teams to play, holy crap, bad things are going to happen on both sides. So it's kind of a flip of the coin. And then two, this is crazy line. Anyway, spent too much time on that game. The Milwaukee game, I kind of like in a sense that Milwaukee's on a streak, and I get it. You bet the streak. Well, they just played the Phillies. Now they got to go play the Reds. Now this is different. The big difference is Milwaukee and Cincinnati play in the same division. They know each other. They played a lot against each other. So that makes a big difference in how this works, where Philadelphia doesn't play a lot against the Milwaukee, and they were just off of a big series that they had played. So I think that this is one of those spots. And Bryce Harper got hit. They had played the Braves, so they were trying to beat them up. And now they're you've got Cincinnati at home. Private X was minus 107. My number is minus 127 for Cincinnati. Now, the breakdown of this and again, you're looking for home teams to bet on. And here's a home team that theoretically has value, or in my mind has value. So when I looked at it, I'm like, both pitchers aren't any good. You've got a 498 Sierra number for Savali and a 568 for Singer. So both are high. So just think of them as both high. It doesn't matter that one's a little bit different than the other, but they're both high. They're both 5. That's a big number. And then the difference in the game right now is Milwaukee's hitting. So in Cincinnati's not really hitting much. And then both bullpens aren't the greatest in the world. And situationally, like what I thought was kind of an important number is the Milwaukee Brewers, even though they're going through the streak, they are 16% worse than an average offense against right-handed pitchers. And I don't think that's good. But the problems you get with the Reds is they don't get that home field lift that you get, as being a home field offense. They're actually minus 11% to an offense at home. So something weird going on with their home field edge that way. But I do think that it's worthy of a look if you like the idea, because the big difference is going to be offense, and that offense needs to travel. And this is a series where you're getting two teams that play each other a lot in the same division. So and it's Aaron Savali, for God's sakes. So I think that they can hit them. This is one of those spots where we'll see what happens. I think the value is good. That's why I kind of like that spot. I do like Boston today. I think that you just got to find a way to look at it. I think the number that I had on that game, my number is Boston minus 170, and the number is minus 140. Now, Fitts is pitching, and Fitts is an average pitcher. And Anderson's the guy coming in on the other side. Anderson he's an average to below average pitcher, but at times in streaks, he can be an ace. I mean, he's just got mesmerizing soft stuff, kind of like what you saw from Yarbrough last night. He's that kind of pitcher. But when I kind of break the game down and look at it, Boston clicks some of the boxes for starting pitcher, and Anderson does not. Anderson, over his last 7 starts, he has a Sierra number of 5.10, So that's not very good. His game score is 44, well below average. So I think that he's not in a good spot. And then offensively, not that Boston's doing a whole lot right now because they're not. They're over the last 7 days, they're 39% worse than an average offense, but the Angels are 31. So that's terrible. So both of them have bad offenses. So you get a good starting pitcher advantage in what you have in Boston. And then situationally, Boston gets an 11% home field jump in their offense. So that always is a good thing for them. And I think that plays out and carries through. Against left-handers, they're 9% better than an average offense. So I think you can kind of start looking at combining certain things and making that work. It's just a matter of whether 140 is worth your while or not. I don't know. I think there might be other opportunities out there, like the Reds at that price is probably pretty good. The other thing I thought was interesting is Detroit with Flaherty goes and plays the White Sox today, and they play them all weekend, for 3 games or whatever it is, for 3 or 4. They're going to be favored big over these guys every day, and they should be. And they should be just kind of where they are today too, right? Flaherty against Cannon, but I think one thing you got to recognize, the White Sox may not win in very many games, but they are playing way more competitive, and it's not necessarily because of their offense. Their pitchers have been better. So my number on this game is 181. I saw the PropX number was 186, so I don't have a lot of value in the game. But what was interesting is when I broke it down, Flaherty's been bad. So he's not been, let's put it this way, Flaherty's not been his above normal self to the degree. He's got a game score of 48 in his last 7. That's below average. It's not very good. His Sierra number is good, so he gets points for that. Cannon does not. But offensively, you start thinking about, the Tigers are good. Well, they are, but currently they're 31% below average to an offense, an average offense. And the White Sox, they're only 10%. So the White Sox offense has been better. When it comes to like scoring runs, the Tigers has averaged 3 runs a game, and the White Sox 3.2. So this is one of those, got to be real careful. And really what I'm trying to tell you is be super careful when you're trying to do the run line and stuff like that, because these aren't the right spots for that, especially teams like we just talked about, the Brewers and the Reds playing each other. Well, it's the same thing here. The Tigers and the White Sox, they play each other. I get it. The White Sox aren't any good, but and what's really crazy is I'll see if I have the number up still. We talked about how teams are against how they do against teams that are over 500. Well, teams under 500, when they play them, the Tigers have played teams that way 19 times. They're 16-3. Holy crap. 16-3. They beat up all these teams that are less than 500. They just beat them up. We talked about the Padres being a little fraudulent with their record of being below 500 against 500 above teams. They beat up the other teams. They're 22-6 against teams that are under 500. So anyway, I don't think there's value there. This San Francisco-San Diego matchup, in this particular case, in my opinion, I think is the numbers off a little bit. My number is San Francisco minus 190 in today's game because Kolek against Webb, especially more because it's at home. And the number that I saw was like 164 is the number that I have. But when I broke it down and kind of looked at it, I decided that this is not a good spot because so Webb is going to be one of the best pitchers in baseball, but at the same time, he's one of these guys that in big games, big spots, I don't trust him. He doesn't do well. So his Sierra number is 2.77 today. That's really phenomenally good. So he gets points for all that. But Kolek's at 3.99. He gets points for that. So they both are in that spot. But over the last 7 games, 55.9 is his Webb, is his game score. Well, that's just above average. Average is 51.50, right? So that's a good game score. That means he's a good pitcher. He's not elite, it means he's good. And then you start stretching stuff out and you go, where's San Francisco's offense? They get no points. Their offense is 16% worse than an average offense. They're scoring 1.8 runs per game. They strike out way the hell too much, and they're not walking enough. So that evens the game up. So where you had your advantage of pitcher, now you drop in San Diego's offense, and the game kind of becomes even, and both of them have good bullpens. So I think the game's kind of a wash. I like San Francisco numbers-wise, but I don't like them when you break the game down. So I think that's a bad spot. I do like this Minnesota matchup. I like it a lot. The pitcher's dominant. You have a 2.72 Sierra number, game score average of 62 over his last 7 games. Severino's been good. He's been serviceable. He's a 52 for a game score, but he doesn't quite hit the box over 53. He's just a little better than average, right? And Sacramento has not been good at home. They're terrible at home. Minnesota's not good on the road, by the way. But pitching travels, right? Both offenses have kind of died. Neither one of them are doing great right now. Minnesota's 10% below average on offense. And then you start swinging it out, but they got a great bullpen. So you got a dominant starter, a great bullpen against a bad offense, a good starter, and a bad bullpen. I kind of like the idea that the Minnesota pitching is going to control the Athletics on offense. So find a way, whether it's team total under, whether it's the game under, and you can go from there. My number in the game in this particular matchup, Minnesota up there. I have Minnesota at -150, and that's what the number was. So I don't see any variance there. And then the last game I think is interesting in a sense that we're going to see kind of what the Mets and Dodgers kind of look like. The Mets, it's kind of hard to say whether they're good or bad. They just beat up the White Sox. So now they got to go play the Dodgers. And today they get May as their opposing pitcher. And in terms of over the last 30 days, May is statistically, Sierra-wise, metric-wise, the best pitcher the Dodgers have. He's been better than Yamamoto. So, and they're throwing Blackburn today. I don't know if you know who Blackburn is, but Blackburn came from Oakland, and then he got hurt. He pitched only a couple games for the Mets. Then he got hurt, came back, pitched a little bit more, then he got hurt again, and now he's finally getting a regular pitch again. Paul Blackburn is his name. He was good in Oakland. He wasn't great, but he was one of those guys that's kind of like maybe on a good team, he's a good pitcher. Well, we'll see. He's going to face a good offense, and this is not necessarily one of those good spots to have one of those kind of pitchers come out and go, oh, I'm just coming back off the injured list, and I get the Dodgers. So, and especially in a sense that he might not be able to go long, and you're going to use up your bullpen in the first game of the series. So we'll see, because I think tomorrow Canning pitches against Kershaw. So again, we'll see how all these kind of matchups work out. But looking at the game, my number was Dodgers -145. It's 152, so I didn't see much advantage there. And I think that it's kind of hard in a sense that I think that the Dodgers played the Yankees, so they saw some pretty good pitching, and they still got good offense. It's hard to say what the Mets were doing because the Mets got the White Sox, so they got some good offensive numbers, but that doesn't mean they're a good offense. So we'll see how that plays out. Both bullpens have been pretty good. Both teams are great on, Dodgers get the biggest home lift of any team in baseball. They are 50% better at home. They're just an awesome at home team, and they're good against right-handed pitching, but so are the Mets. So this might be a good spot for an over. So we'll see. So I didn't think there was a lot of betting value today, especially on the sides. I thought Cincinnati provided a little bit of value. I think Boston can beat the Angels, for example, but that's minus 140, and it's kind of questionable. So I still like that Minnesota game against the A's. You just got to figure out how to bet it. I also thought, maybe Milwaukee and Cincinnati was a good over spot. Savali's not a good pitcher, and neither is Singer. And you've got a spot where Milwaukee's been hitting, so that might turn into something. And I thought, maybe Mets, maybe Dodgers over. Now I haven't. Obviously, it's early. It was early when I did all this stuff, and I haven't vetted it all out. But those were my thoughts, and I hadn't made any big bets or done any bets at all yet. Jeff, you're silent right now.
I'm going to close with.
There you go.
It's kind of funny here. 2 team totals here. Minnesota 5.5 juiced under minus 140. You can get them to get to 6 or better plus 120. Again, in the Banjo ballpark, guaranteed 27 outs. But here's the funny: the only other 5.5 today is the Red Sox that you're talking about. 5.5 juice under minus 145. So you can bet the Red Sox to get to 6 or better plus 125. But you're not guaranteed the 9th inning. If you get to the 9th inning, obviously you're trailing. That's number one. But I'll give you the funny of it, Scotty, is that the first 5 team total is only 2.5 juiced over minus 15 cents. So they're almost like baiting you. They're telling you, hey, the Red Sox to get to 3 or better, guaranteed 15 outs, is only 15 cents. Yet, you're not guaranteed the 9th inning, and you got to get to 6. It's almost like they're telling you that there could be a sluggish first 5, but 6, 7, 8, the Red Sox going to explode.
Yeah, I don't foresee the Angels have a terrible bullpen. They don't have. I mean, Kenley Jansen's a closer. So he's been decent this year, but I mean, they don't have anybody before him, and these guys they keep bringing out, they keep getting hit. So I don't have a problem with that. I like, that's why I say I think that, you start to look at what's going on in Boston, and they won a pretty tight game yesterday. That was a pretty good game for them to win. Obviously, when Crochet's on the mound, they need to win those games. So we'll see what happens. See what happens today. But these are teams they got to beat. They got to beat. Like they're below 500 right now. That doesn't mean they're not going to get there. Like, so one of my numbers that I have for power rating with them is so Fangraphs and Baseball Prospectus combined. They're a 79 win team, and applying then in base runs, they get 5 more wins. So they've lost 5 games they should have won based off of sequencing and events of things that have happened. So I have them, as an 85 win team. So as an 85 win team, that bumps them ahead of all the other teams in the American League East. Obviously except the Yankees. So I think that they're a team that then when you look at what's going on in the Angels world, they are at best a 72 win team, and that's Fangraphs and Baseball Perspectives together. Then you mix in what's going on with base runs. They've won 3 they shouldn't have. They're a 68 win team. So I see this as a big difference in terms of overall team strength. And Mike Trout's back. Well, whatever. Mike Trout's not doing what Mike Trout normally does. And he's not even batting 200 yet, I don't think. So he's not hitting, he's hitting home runs, but I mean, hasn't done much since he's come back. He's only played twice, I think. So I look at it and go, I think Boston's a pretty dominant favorite in this spot. And probably will be a dominant favorite in every game they play against the Angels at home. So that can get you into a little bit of trouble unless you vet it out a little bit. Kind of like with Cleveland, the Cleveland, they have 7 games they've won because of sequencing and events. So we had to knock off 7 games from their wins. That's a lot. So that really substantiates a team in those kind of categories. So anyway, my opinion is, I think just like what you said, I think Boston's the more dominant team. I think Boston can do a lot here. I think Anderson's not in a good spot in what he's doing. That could mean he's due for a good one. But I mean, at the same time, I sit there and think about it. He doesn't have the power, and that's a lot of times what I think of when you go and you have dominant stuff. And the best way to describe dominant stuff is if you go look at the FIP number. So fielding independent pitching, dominant stuff, walks, strikeouts, home runs. Pitchers control that. They control the game. And Anderson, 5.27. It's the second worst one to Meyer, 5.92 on the board today. Of all the pitchers, he's the second worst. So that means he's reliant on his defense. That means balls are going to be put in play. And if balls are put in play, I think that, Boston wins this game.
Well, and it's June 2nd, and the reports today and yesterday already. This month couldn't be huger for the Sox to get to the All-Star break. Padres looking into Duran, potentially in a trade there. And if the Red Sox are going to sell, then obviously Chapman's had an amazing start to the year. I think they paid $11 million for him. If they're not going to be contenders, there'll be teams that are contenders that will definitely be shopping Chapman, Scotty.
So their playoff odds on Fangraphs for the Red Sox are, go up here to them, they are to make the playoffs 33.6% to make the playoffs. So the Blue Jays are 43.8% to make the playoffs. The Guardians 46.7%, the Royals 37%, the Rangers 23%, and the Astros 67%. So according to these numbers, they got a little bit of work to do. But my numbers sort of sit there and go, hey, they're a stronger team than some of those other teams. All they got to do is just start winning games, just start playing and winning games. And I think that that'll take care of itself to a certain degree. I remember back maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, we talked about the Blue Jays. And, I think the Blue Jays are a team that has the potential to be there at the end. They've got the offense that can kind of keep them in these games. But we'll see. The American League, it looks like 97% Yankees, 95% Tigers, right? Those two we know are going to be there. And then in the American League West, what's interesting to me, what I thought was interesting is the projected wins for the Mariners are 86.6, and the projected wins for the Astros was 86. So that's going to come right down to the end. One of those two teams are going to make it as the division winner. Well, the other's going to make it as the wild card. So I think they're going to be in, and then that means you have playoff. It's going to be Twins, Guardians, Royals, Blue Jays, Rays, Red Sox. Those teams need to start winning to make sure that they position themselves to make a run if that's what they want to do. I mean, just because, it's like the Twins, for example, they got two guys at the top of that rotation in Lopez and Ryan that and then you put in Ober and Paddock and some of these other guys, you put these guys in there, get them hitting a little bit. Nobody wants to play them. So you get them in the playoffs and, you match them up against, say, the Astros. That's going to be a pretty tough matchup for some of these teams.
Well, we can't wait. You and I will be back here Friday in the afternoon to go over MLB Friday Night Lights. Scroller at Webby20MLB. Any closing thoughts for you, sir, on where else they can find you and availability and just baseball?
Well, my availability is good. Just leave messages on my Twitter or whatever, and um, I get back to people. I get people ask me certain questions every once, but that's one of the things that last season, Jeff, I was on here every night doing a baseball show with stuff, and kind of backed off of doing that so much. And it was great because doing the baseball show, we got lots of questions. So if you guys have questions or want specifics, or you need me to go over something, I'd be glad to do stuff like that. So that's more what I'm into is I don't want to sit here and rattle off stuff if people don't respond, and I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean that ask questions. So I would ask people this some of this stuff, right? Like I hear this all the time when you watch it, like VSiN Network, and these guys start spouting off stuff about baseball games. This guy's his whip in his last 3 starts is this, and then his earned run expected is this, and his FIP is that. And I sit there and I go, do you even know what you're saying? Like there's a meaning to every number, and every number has a purpose. And if you use it right, then it makes sense to the story of your bet. And if you don't understand it, and you don't understand why it works the way that it does, then it's not going to work for you. Like, I don't understand why somebody doesn't call those guys out on like VSiN and go, why do you use that expected earned run average number? Do you know where it comes from? Do you know how it's generated? I mean, it's based off of barrel rates and hard hit averages velocity off the bat. Why would you use that? It means nothing. It's 100% made up. It's not even a real number. Anyway, point being is that ask the questions. That's the only way you learn, and that's the only way I learn. And I would much rather help someone learn than have them go out and make a mistake on their own and listen to some other guy or some other chick or whoever that's doing these games, and they had a big article on, well, how do you bet White Sox and how do you bet Rockies games? And I'm like, you don't. What do you mean? How do you bet them? There's 30 games, 30 teams. Why do you want to go bet those games? I get it. They're going to lose all the time. But when you bet them, you're not making any money. Well, we got to figure out how to bet them. Well, no, you don't, because when you do that, you're not betting the same bet of what you're trying to do, because the guy was like trying to sit there and go, yeah, we need to bet these Colorado Rockies games by going, well, their pitchers are better and this and that, and this is going on. So, we want to bet them by overs and unders. Well, that's not betting against the Rockies. That's betting against the pitchers and run lines and totals and stuff. That has nothing to do with the team. So whatever. I just sat there and get confused on what people actually listen to, and then go, what are you talking about? Do you really know what? So anyway, I would love to see a lot of people coming into our streams and our conversations and talking and asking questions and making comments and stuff. That'd be great.
Well, the shocker, and I didn't have this on my bingo card, the St. Louis Cardinals at 150-1 in a 3-team tiebreaker won the most wins at 19 with 2 other teams at the Circa. 150-1. So if you had the Cardinals with the most wins in May, God bless you. Take yourself out to lunch, get yourself a nice steak dinner. June is upon us, so we can't thank you enough. Great turnout here on Twitter. Myself and Scotty will be back sometime Friday afternoon. Keep an eye on our timelines. Secondly, tomorrow morning, 10:30-ish, Andrew McGinnis will be back talking NHL, and we're going to do some CFL preview as the Canadian Football League opens up. And then at 11 o'clock, the NCAA Insiders will be recapping what is going on in college baseball. The number 1 overall seed, Vanderbilt, gone. Texas, gone. So some shockers here. We got some clinchers today. I myself will be on with Andrew McGinnis on his channel at McGinnis Picks on YouTube at 3 o'clock. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at Webby20 MLB. For myself, at EC Sports Invest. Everyone have a great, great morning. Behave yourselves. Enjoy the start of the week, and we'll see you soon.